Okay, so I'm back, and it's officially 10:30 EST, the schedule that we set this for, so it's time to get started. So, ladies and gentlemen, everyone in the Shiny Colors Discord server, welcome to the first ever Shiny Colors Discord podcast with special cooperation of the Shiny Colors Discord server and Idolmaster subs. My name is Renault GP. If you're wondering why that was completely different from my Discord name, it's probably just because I'm way too lazy to change it. But if you do see the Idolmaster sub videos, I am credited as Renault GP, followed by, or accompanied by, Cho. Hey Cho, how you doing?
I am doing alright. How about yourself?
I am doing just fine. So, since this is our first podcast, I did disclaim that we're going to be taking care of a few topics here that are a little general. There's nothing too specific that'll be tackled here in this podcast, but I do believe that this is the best place to start because, well, I think the only way to start off a podcast series is to talk about beginner topics.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty fair.
Okay, so we'll begin it off by with a brief introduction of ourselves. I'll go ahead and start with myself. I'm Renault GP, and I've been in the Idolmaster franchise for a good 10 years. That's right, I started 2009 with Idolmaster 2. And I do have a couple of friends who were part of the translation effort for most of the PSP games. And since then, I've seen every single birth of each branch, except the original one, of course. And Cho, how about yourself?
Well, I'm Cho. You can find me at Cho Goku Ozaru on Twitter. Moderator for this Discord, of course, and content creator for the Shiny Colors database on YouTube. For Idolmaster, I started in 2017. I started through just kind of watching and observing CGSS gameplay. And I kind of got introduced through a friend recommending me to watch the CG anime back in 2018, which then led me to finding out about Shiny Colors and the whole pre-release campaign and all that, and I've been in it ever since, so I guess basically 3 years in.
This is pretty good because now we got two perspectives. One from someone who's been here as long as me, and one from someone who's, seen it in the modern day. The introduction of the series to a modern day light. So this is going to be a really good spectrum of how people are going to look at it. So we're going to move over to our first question here. It's a pretty simple one. We'll start off with Cho's answer, then we'll start off with mine. Question 1 is, what do you like most about Idolmaster Shiny Colors? Go ahead.
Well, the one thing I like the most is just how fleshed out characters are between their backgrounds, their own stories in game, and the interactions within the unit. Like, it really helps make this world feel really lived in. It's one of the things I hear kind of complained about with some of the bigger units, like in CG, where there's so many characters, there isn't enough time to focus on the individual stories as much as it is in Shiny. It feels less like a vignette and more just like this whole big picture. It makes them feel like genuine people. They have their own hopes, their own dreams, their own shortcomings, and every story kind of works through them in their own ways. And it's just been really fascinating to see how these characters have genuinely grown in the year and a half the game's been out.
Concerning that comment, it does seem like the statement has been echoed through a lot of the older producers that I know throughout the years who have just been from the 765 All-Stars days, because it definitely has to do something with the number. Because if you know, the 765 All-Stars were only 13 girls and they were never added. They almost got reduced, but that's another story. But I think the sweet spot is definitely around 13 to 16 girls, where it's cycling through them that you don't really feel like you see the same girl every day. At the same time, there isn't like this one girl who is left out in the back of the bus somewhere. Every girl gets this nice cycle of content. At the same time, you don't really feel like you're getting sick of them every now and then. What I like the most about Shiny Colors is definitely the way they managed to give us something new. Because when I heard that another branch was already going to be introduced over to the Idolmaster series, I'm like, what? We already got Cinderella Girls. We already got Million Live. What else can you provide to this franchise that already exists? And I'm like, I want to be surprised. And little did I know, I was surprised by all these new designs. I think there are a couple of designs that you would find definitely unique to, when you looked at the cast, you found a couple of designs unique, didn't you?
Yeah. I mean, there were a couple where I looked at them and thought, "Oh no, we're really going to approach this again." When I saw Illumination Stars, I thought, "Oh no, this Hiyori character, she's just going to be Rin." When we saw Antika and we got the descriptions for characters like Kogane, Kogane sounded just like Uzuki, except just a really stacked Uzuki, and I was like, "Oh, so we have two Zuki now." I see. But I'm glad that a lot of those expectations were curbed for the most part.
Yeah, the expectation thing was definitely something that happened along with me as well. Because if you don't really realize it, or if you don't notice it, there is an underlying form of tradition throughout how most of the franchises in Idolmaster go. Every Idolmaster seems to have these three, you know, we call them the stoplight trio, the red, blue, and yellow. Every Idolmaster has this kind of adult girl or adult character. It's kind of like a tradition that kind of limits most of how the cast goes. Like, you know, you gotta have your Chihaya, you gotta have your Miki, you gotta have... It seems like there's always this formula that each branch has to go through. It's definitely apparent in Million Live where Shizuka, Mirai, and Tsubasa can just be considered, you know, Haruka, Miki, and Chihaya 2.0. But I was definitely afraid that Mano and Hiyori, Meguru, they'd be the same thing. But, well... Meguru, we still need to see it a little further, but Mano and Hiyori definitely aren't like, you know, they're not Haruka 2.0, they're not Chihaya 2.0. The other units, of course, it was especially really funny because we were thinking every branch has to have like a main loli in their cast or a main little girl in the cast, and then Kaho shows up, and then she's not the loli everyone was expecting, and then it's like, it showed that they want to break tradition. It showed that they don't want to do the same thing they've been doing for like 15 years.
Yeah, and one thing that was brought up, I want to say it was one of the first guidebooks or one of the first interviews with the developers, but one of the things that I think was also really neat with Shiny was the overall emphasis on character fashion. They're not afraid to change character designs, which, as far as I understand, is something that has been sort of a problem with the earlier series, is that they don't want to try to change character designs too much. Whereas you'll have some character costumes in this game where you wouldn't even realize they're the same character. The silhouette's like not even close.
There was a huge problem with that. They actually kind of considered it sort of taboo. If one of the biggest examples is how Azusa's hair got from like long to where her first appearance was she had long hair, then she got short hair the next one, and then some people didn't really like it. So I think that was like one of the very first times they said, oh, we probably shouldn't do this anymore. And then you go over to like CG, and since their costumes are what make them stand out, you know, like Ranko, she always has to be wearing gothic stuff. You know, Rina, she always has to be wearing clothes that look like she's trying to be a rock girl. It seems like the reason why they don't really change their outfits or their fashion enough is because they have to stick to that quirk. Shiny, on the other hand, has definitely went above and beyond with fashion statements where one girl alone has already, within 2 years, encompassed way more statements than most of the other characters in different branches. Speaking of fashion, by the way, that's definitely another video that's going to come up on our Idolmaster subs channel. I hope you guys are going to look forward to it. It's basically a video about the fashion. We're going to talk all about, you know, what motifs each unit have and how they express it. And it's definitely easily one of the best parts of Shiny Colors, in my opinion. The fashion is definitely one of it. So we're going to move on to the second question over here. The second question would be a little open to probably some of the current audience feedback or audience input to most of the other guys in the voice chat room. Question number 2 is, what would you want Shiny Colors to improve on in the future? And this could be in different ways, different topics. Do you want it to improve on gameplay-wise or like story-wise, commu-wise? What do you want to see from them?
Oh, and don't feel pressured that you have to necessarily join in voice. You know, we have the chat available here, so if you'd like us to read your statement, and we'll just attribute it to you, then that's perfectly fine.
All right. So, what would you want to see Shiny Colors improve on in the future? Have you found anything lacking about it? Have you found something that you feel is a wasted opportunity? Go ahead.
So, I have 2 things, and one of them actually depends on more of the information that we've just been getting today. So to give you guys context, it's 11/29/2019. Just earlier today, we got a bit more news about CollaboFest, which is supposedly going to be this new encompassing game mode that's going to be including not quite PvP, but more like co-op work. And one of the things I was originally going to say is that I want to see more interactions with other producers in-game. You know, the best you get is you can technically add other users on Enza, but after that, nothing happens. You don't really have any sort of interactions. There's no gameplay benefits to adding people on Enza. So hopefully with CollaboFest, we get more opportunities to be able to work with other producers. You know, we don't want to sit here and say the entire game is just a competition between you and other producers. I like the idea that we might be able to coexist and actually cooperate in more than just a competition setting. And the other thing, to be more kind of gameplay centric, is I'd like to see an improvement on the quality of rewards from modes like Grade Fest or some of the event types that feel lacking, like training events. The level of rewards, I feel, doesn't necessarily match the amount of effort that you put in to receive those rewards. You know, right now with Grade Fest, you're earning anywhere from 5 to 10, sometimes 15 of a specific currency, and the item you're looking for is now hovering around 150 to 200 of that currency. So you're looking at several months before you even get to make one small, tiny improvement to a card. And I wish that either A, it was easier to get that kind of currency, or just easier to upgrade cards in general.
So concerning the two things you were saying, one is the more collaboration with other producers. I feel like they don't exactly know how to do this just yet, because this game format is something that I feel they made in advance and have not 100%, I'm not saying it's a very sloppy job, but not 100% envisioned how they were exactly going to continue with it. Because other games so far do have ways that you can co-opt with other producers. For example, in Starlight Stage, you got Live Party. For previous Arcade Mass games, I actually thought that since this was going to be what they considered as a browser adaptation of Arcade Idolmaster, or Arcade Mass as they call it, there would be those weekly updates where you could say, oh, I'm going to play against that guy, or I'm going to play with that guy. I was thinking these kind of functions would be put into the game. So far, they haven't seemed like they would be able to do that just yet. I thought Collab Fest was it, but we'll just have to wait for the details to see if that really is what they're planning. I don't think it's what we were expecting just yet. Where, you know, we were there in the chat and we said like, oh, we can just wait for rooms. We can make rooms and all join into this one collaboration fest. But I don't think that's what it's going to be. Level of rewards, I definitely agree with that one. It seems like they aren't very sure of how they are going to reward the most diehard of players here. It feels too little in some places and too much or outright not justified in other places, because for the most part, Idolmaster people or Idolmaster players are dedicated as heck. They need to realize that Idolmaster players will stop at nothing if the rewards are good enough. And at most points of this game, some of the rewards just aren't. But let me tell you, if they do end up making some of the rewards very much worth it, they're just going to go all out. Because, for example, if you've seen what every time it happens in the Million Live Anniversary is a biggest example of just how much these guys these producers can just dedicate their lives to this game. The freaking company told them to stop playing, and they're just not going to stop playing. The reward has to be that kind of worth when you have these kind of people who are willing to play that. So let's take a look at the guys. What have they chatted here? QOL, different units for Wing and TFD, for example. Yeah, a couple like, you could go into this page if you want to use units for Wing, or you can go to this page if you want units for things. Flapping Day. Some improvements to Great Fest, expand Great Fest tiers, more new Wing-like produce functions, and an anime and or console game to spread the word. For most of these QOL updates, I do think they're going to be added over time. We are at least very luckily blessed to have the developers in our server who is checking the stuff out. So maybe it won't be as soon as we want it, but it's definitely probably going to come. They did just expand the cap of how many fest idols you can produce, so baby steps, I guess. And for that one, I definitely think that we're going to need some form of other way to spread the word about this series. I'm not quite sure if an anime or console game is possible just yet. I've seen how it happens to the other branches. The curse, or I wouldn't exactly say it's a curse, but the whole meme or prediction is they always have to space out these things 2 years. If you think about it, when 2011 anime ended, 2013 movie started for All Stars, then 2015 CG anime happened, then 2017 Sidem anime happened. So it might be just a meme or it might be just a curse, but I do think we're probably going to get something in the line. Namco probably knows what to do.
One other thing I was thinking about, and this is one that, again, only really depends on if you're, say, like the hardcore player, but I've noticed that when, to give context to people that haven't necessarily played Shiny enough, whenever you produce a card, you now get a new Fest version of the card. But the number of Fest cards you can actually hold on to at any given point has a cap, but it doesn't tell you outright what that cap is necessarily at any given point. It only tells you once you're actually over the cap, and now you have to start deleting units. I kind of wish that we had either more ways to expand that, or if it just kind of naturally expanded itself as the game got older. Known some other mobile games where you'll have an inventory, but then, like, say after the first anniversary, they double the inventory size, so that you don't have to keep doing a couple runs, deleting a few units, doing a couple runs, deleting a few units.
In my perfect world scenario, you'd probably have like this number on the top right of the screen that says you're 300 out of 400. If you do 100 more, that's what I would want, because I played a couple of games, or I played maybe 3 or 4 mobile games that have told me that this is how much you got of this thing. I've been through a lot of games where the UI is just horrible and the UI just doesn't tell you anything about what you're doing. So something like that would definitely be the best case scenario for this game, since stuff like Producer's Cup exists, then you're just making idols over and over again and you just keep going like a freaking maniac. It'd be great if there was like a number somewhere that tells you, hey, you have this much somewhere, and we don't have to slog through every menu just to find out. But this is a browser game. This is basically how most of those go anyway. One last thing I do want to see Shiny Colors improve on the future is I want to see how they would be able to utilize their talent. And I'm probably going to have to break this down into context for a bit. When I say utilize their talent, I'll have to use the other branches for comparison for this. For example, I believe that out of all the branches in the Idolmaster series as a whole, I believe that Million Live utilizes their talent the most, because what they have over there is when you vote for a certain thing, they make this scenario. Let's say, oh, here's the cafe scenario. Here are the rules. You have elder sister role, little sister role, youngest sister role, and then cat and handsome customer. And then you can vote for anyone you want in there. And then whoever just comes up on the roles there, they'll be the one to sing the song. And they're really good at managing their talent, where you could literally put the 5 most random guys or 5 most random idols onto those roles, and the song is going to be amazing. I think we're still going to get the way they manage their talent the most when solos come along, or like if ever voting events do come along, because the cast is short enough or compact enough that we'll probably be able to do that soon enough. Good things come to those who wait, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the final question here, and maybe we'll have enough time for some after podcast talk or after question talk. The final thing I want you to, or want to ask you is, what is the one thing you want Shiny Colors to do? People in the chat, you can also write down your answers to this question. When I say, what is the one thing you want Shiny Colors to do? What is the one thing you want Shiny Colors to be known for? For context, what the other branches are known for is something like what I always go by the mantra is CG is known for visuals, for their visual presentation of their characters. Million Live is known for their amazing talent in vocals and song composure, and Sidem is known for just being the most wholesome Idolmaster branch there has ever lived. What is the one thing you want Shiny Colors to do so that it makes their gives them their identity?
Okay. So I guess if I were to summarize my answer to this in one word, it would be unity. And what I originally had said was, in scenario events, especially some of the bigger ones, we see a lot of interaction between the other units. We had the big Christmas story where you had Antika setting up to deal with a thief, and you have all the other members like trying to figure out what in the world's going on, while you had like Illumination Stars trying to buy the Christmas decorations, and there's all this this conformed chaos going on. But it was neat to see all these units kind of interacting with each other and seeing how they bounced off of each other personality wise. And I think the one thing I want to see Shiny do is reflect this in future events with like newer cards. I would love to see event cards that encourage mixing and matching units more directly. I could say imagine that we had a Sakuya card that links up well with the twins, or a Kaho that gains passives if you have Asahi on the team, or something like that, where you have these ideas of right now of, okay, Antika runs with Antika, Alstroemeria runs with Alstroemeria, but it would be cool to see event cards, even if they're not necessarily good, show that they're willing to diverge away from only units interacting within their own unit, and kind of creating new subunits, as some of the other series, like CG especially, has done before, but to a slightly higher level.
Something about that does strike me when you said the word unity. This was actually, the word unity was the whole point of the run of the 765 All-Stars before like year 2013, 2014, which ironically lines up with the number of characters we have here in Shiny Colors. I feel like the way they approached how the introduction would be for the characters, where they're all in units, the 4 ones we have right now, 4 or 5? We have like 5, yeah. It's reminiscent of Sidem, because Sidem was also introduced in units, but Sidem, sooner or later, they also broke up, and then they mix and matched guys. Oh, you go over here with that guy, you go over here with that guy, and you can make this new identity. What you said is definitely possible, and it's definitely something I want to see them do. I want them to see what kind of new combinations you can put together through these characters that have already been established, by having them introduced one by one, at the same time having them introduced with characters that they plan to interact with. For example, Antika, as we've numerous times gone over through the story comedies, they're just basically girls with problems that they're not exactly ready to admit. What happens if you take these girls and then split them up and then somehow interact them with people who aren't like that? That's simply something that needs to be seen in the future. And then just have them as one big production studio. On my side, though, what I do want to see Shiny Colors do is, I want them to, what's the word for it? Because when I first saw the design of Shiny Colors, when I saw the swan, I overthought about this way too much. I saw the swan, and then I saw the pigeon on Mano's card. Like, when Mano had the pigeon in her first art, everyone went ballistic because they're like, huh? Okay, I guess she's gonna be an idol about pigeons. And I was like, producers love overthinking things. So when I saw the swan and I saw the pigeon, I was overthinking this thing like heck. And I thought the pigeon and the swan were like metaphors where, oh, the pigeon is a dumb bird because pigeons are known to be dumb. It doesn't really know much. It's just gonna follow whatever instructions you're gonna tell it. So I thought the metaphor was, the pigeon is Mano. She doesn't really know much just yet because she's a new girl, introduced into the new modern franchise of the Idolmaster. And the swan is a beautiful bird who just elegantly moves like a work of art every time it passes. So I thought that the metaphor was, a pigeon will soon become a swan. It's the girls who don't really know much just yet become beautiful works of art when they're on stage. That's what I overthought that way too much. So I definitely think that this was something, if they could confirm what I think that was their vision for the game was, it'd be really great.
Yeah, and some of the things we see in chat here, they talk about how Shiny Colors is already known for its stories and characters, but to give us a way to view the stories later via an album without having to draw the cards, even if it's grindy. Yeah, that'd be something I'd be cool with too. They tie the stories to the cards themselves, which gives its own gravity towards pulling them. Because let's say you're really curious about the story of Fuyuko, well, now you have to pull Fuyuko's SSR. But it would be nice if you had the option to just use the keys that they give you in game right now that already unlock story events. If you could just unlock those for the cards themselves without having them, then it definitely would expand that possibility to other players that aren't necessarily willing to throw gems at every single banner just because they want to read the story.
I mean, it definitely shows in how so many people are excited to volunteer to say, oh, I actually drew this card, even though I'm not a fan of this girl, or like I'm not super into this girl. Since I drew her because I happen to have her, I'm going to go ahead and translate her and put this up, because people are so curious about what's going to be the next step, what's going to be the next chapter in these girls' lives, that they just want to volunteer and help out as many people as they can, even though they're not exactly a big fan of that girl. And honestly, it actually might end up them continuing to become one because they got one. It's very reminiscent of how I remember being a 765 All-Stars guy, and I had to buy every single game that they made out just because there's a next chapter. This is more of the F2P dynamic, but there's only so many gems you can farm before you hit that wall. And it's not even a wall because you want to keep playing, it's a wall because you want to know more. Yeah, the knowledge wall. It's more of the fact that you want to keep being invested in these characters and in these stories. You're not exactly held off from playing the game because you can just times for that stuff and just zip through every piece of chat without knowing whatever the heck they said. But it's just because that these things are locked behind the paywall or the gacha wall that you have to rely on these other volunteers, or you have to rely on these other guys who happen to draw them and say, I'm just going to volunteer this because I was lucky enough to draw them and I know Japanese, so I'm going to translate this. Luckily, shout outs to Batsu if you're ever going to watch this. Shout outs to that guy. Really big MVP for this server who's translating things Mach speed for like girls he just happens to have. We got Batsu. We got am I pronouncing this correct? Belvera, the guy who does like most of the Antica stuff. Shoutouts to those guys who just translate things nonstop for the characters they have and characters they just happen to draw. Those guys are the real MVPs. So that wraps up all of the questions that we had planned for this podcast. I'm going to go ahead and devote 5 to 6 more minutes of post-podcast chatter. Maybe we can get some feedback from the people in the voice chat, what they want to see next, what they think we should improve on in this podcast. Cho, if you have any closing words before we take some feedback from the audience, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for anybody who's listening and you haven't given Shiny Colors a chance, or you've been looking at it and going, I don't know, it feels like it's a lot of work, don't worry. As somebody who, is still, very, very green to the franchise as a whole and can barely understand a lick of Japanese, I've been having a blast going through this game, both in terms of, finding out about the story here and there, just appreciating the gameplay loop as it is, and trying to delve a little bit deeper. And that's what I've been trying to do, especially with the newer channel with the Shiny Colors database, is bringing that information to light for other people that don't necessarily know. I mean, we have a wiki, but sometimes people find it more digestible to listen to somebody talk about a card than to have to read up on it yourself and have formulated opinions on cards and how the game works and all that stuff. So don't be afraid to try out Shiny. If you catch this podcast and, again, you're not really sure, just give it a shot. Everybody here at the Discord is definitely willing to help. Any questions, we definitely have the answers here. Just give it a shot.
You've definitely saved me a couple of 100,000 of gems by telling me this card doesn't really seem like it's worth it, or this card can be passed up. go ahead and check out that guy's reviews. You may save a lot of money from not spending on gacha just because this guy told you not or gave you an idea. We're looking to be the start of just a general content creator channel or web of content creators for Shiny Colors, because pretty much all the other branches have this covered, and I've been scouring other places, other channels. We don't have something like Hokago P Time, or we don't have something like Data Database for Shiny Colors just yet. So it's very exciting to be like, we'll be the frontiers for content creation for this branch. And, well, checking out how long the other Idolmaster franchises have survived until now, it's definitely something that I feel we should be proud of if this does take off into the future, and we'll just keep making non-stop content for this stuff. But yeah, to anyone who's going to be listening to this podcast in the future after recording, take it from someone who's been in this franchise for 10 years. This is not something that has been done before. This is not like total rehashing of stuff, because there are a couple of franchises out there. I'm not going to name them, and just for the risk of not sounding malicious, there are a couple of places or a couple of franchises, heck, even non-idol franchises, who just try and cash out on stuff by just reusing stuff that's already worked before. They were really brave and really experimental with this one. What is in Shiny Colors is not what's already been done in previous places. You're going to have a very unique experience here. You could go ahead and check out the Discord. We're going to put links in the video if everyone's just going to catch this in the recording. We will be open arms when you come here. Any questions you got, any time you feel like you need some help. And even though we may be a little busy because we get kind of frustrated with how the game currently is, we're definitely going to answer you more openly than most Discords. Truly, I feel like this one's actually been one of the most welcoming one I've been to. It's definitely because of your help.
Let's see. Oh, we have a statement in chat saying, I introduced Shiny Colors to my friend a while back just by telling him about the Produce Run, and he liked it because it reminded him of IMAS before without being totally the same. And I think that's a very fair way to look at it. If you're familiar with Arcade Mass, or if you're familiar with the console games in particular, you're going to feel very similar vibes, and in some ways there's some improvements over time that if there were some qualms that you might have had in the past, maybe they've been solved now.
You definitely don't want to go back in time and line up to those magnetic strap machines. That's not something you want to experience in 2019. You just they've probably compacted as much of the original essence as they can. You're definitely not going to get every single bit of it, but they've captured enough of it over here with the produce runs. I do feel like what one guy said here before, that 52 weeks would definitely feel like more of the Arcade Mass experience. But what we have now is definitely what I would say is a well-executed revival of the old gameplay, because now we're head to toe with all these rhythm games. I play 2 of them, and it gets really, really monotonous when you have to play a rhythm game for like 8 hours a day because they're all played the same. You can just tap the screen mindlessly like a freaking zombie. And having a different game mode and having a different format of game for Shiny Colors definitely feels like you can cut the monotony somewhere. You don't want to tap a screen. You don't want to listen to songs that you would probably get sick of if you play enough. It's definitely happened to me in certain events in Starlight Stage and theater days. But I do believe if we do get more game formats in the future for Shiny, Gravure for you, I definitely want to go ahead and check those out, because Shiny Colors has definitely got a lot looking for it. We got a comment here that says, Shiny is a lovely break from all my rhythm games, and it makes me kind of sad when some people scared of the Japanese are just waiting for the rhythm game. This is a comment I mainly get from people who just aren't, am I going to use the word brave, or just aren't daring enough to check out something like a heavy text-based game. And I can sort of kind of understand where heavy text-based games are unattractive to some people, but for the people who will find this attractive, there is just such a genuine experience behind this stuff that we read in the game. I really feel like if you want to find the real core of how this is, you gotta go ahead and slog through most of the content that we're making, slog through most of the translations, because it's all in here. Yeah, there are rhythm games like Theater Days who do end up balancing rhythm aspect and story aspect, but the original source is definitely still the best place to go to.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say one thing to the really old heads. While you do have the idea of our 32-week mode and all the progressing character stories as they are, do not expect an Awakened Miki. We have yet to have anybody who is an Awakened Miki yet. So don't be worried, or don't be too fearful of something like that happening in the near future. I don't think they're leading up to something like that, but
well,
if that were to happen, the implications of the rest of the character would be certainly something.
I'm pretty sure Bandai Namco's learned their lesson for for the past decade. They've been doing that. I'm only gonna say pretty sure, not 100% sure, because we've had something happen this year that I'm not gonna get into details about. That is probably a feeling that they probably didn't learn 100 things. But I do think Asahi feels like the ace character, because Asahi just trucks through everything that's thrown at her, but not in the way that Awakened Miki, but like you said, not in the way that she just, bursts open like a Super Saiyan and just destroys everything. Asahi does have her weaknesses, but it's so amazing to see a character like that just become the ace overnight. It's something that someone has been seen, and I hope they don't repeat the mistakes of the past, because they got something really, really solid here. People are asking, wait, are we gonna have to explain Awakened Miki? Whoa.
Maybe for a different episode.
Yeah, that's definitely for a different episode. Probably like something called Renault GP goes boomer mode and talks about 765 All-Stars for 30 minutes. If you guys want to see that, go ahead and tell that in the comments. But we're currently going on for 37 minutes, 17 minutes more than I actually planned this stuff. So, Cho, we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up because it's past midnight where I am, and it's been a lovely time talking to you and everyone else in the Shiny Colors Discord. Please do wait. It might take a week or so for this podcast to go back up on VOD, because my current video editor is horribly sick. He's trying to do 3 videos right now, 1 Million Live, 1 Cinderella Girls, and 1 Shiny Colors. So please give him some time. I don't want him to die on us, because if we lose our editor, it's gonna be super hard finding another one.
Please rest up, Mr. Editor.
Okay, so that wraps it up for this podcast. I'm Renault GP, accompanied by
Cho.
And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you for tuning in.